Hi, everybody. I am here with Geordie Martinez, and I'm going to kick off this interview by saying thank you so much, Geordie, for meeting with us today. And first off, can you tell us a little bit about yourself? You know, where you're working now? What are you doing?
Sure. Yeah, I work at ILM. I used to be the trainer for 5 years, but I'm going to try and transition out of that into like a leadership role, trying to. I'm a crowds tech lead now, so I've gone from being a creature guy to being one of the few crowds people there. So we run crowds in Houdini. We have proprietary software. We run it in all the tools. So yeah, pardon me.
What do you do? You said a trainer. What kind of duties did you do there?
Yeah, so for the first 5 years I was at ILM, I trained all the new hires that came in as creature TDs.
Oh, okay.
So I would train them on the proprietary tools, how to rig characters, how to take them over into our proprietary simulation tool and set up cloth, flesh, rigid dangly bits and stuff, stuff like that.
Okay.
And I would get usually 1 to 2 weeks with them, and I'd try and run them through tutorials. And try and get them wet behind the ears, so when they were thrown into the frying pan, they wouldn't, they'd be ready. But yeah,
got it.
Kind of guide the newbies. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So do you do a lot of also Python at work?
Yeah, you can't be a creature TD nowadays, in my opinion, if you don't know Python. That's just in the old days you could totally do it, because you might have a long time to rig one character, but now you have to rig 50 characters in 3 days, and it's anything that you have to do twice, you should code. Basically, is my motto. So
that's great. And how did you start as a coder? How did you start?
I've kind of got a really weird way, but I started off when I was in film school. There were no film jobs getting out of film school, and I wanted to be a camera operator. But the dot-com boom was happening, and I had a bunch of friends that were making crazy, ludicrous amounts of money doing flash animation. So I worked at the San Francisco State Library bookstore in the computer department there, and one woman came back one day. She was completely furious with Flash, Macromedia Flash back then. So she returned a copy of the software, and we're not supposed to take copies of software back, but she said, well, I don't want it, you can have it. So she gave it to me, basically.
Wow.
So I went home and installed it, and then I just started teaching myself at work. And eventually I got a job doing flash animation, and they wanted people that would be willing to learn how to code and do flash and this stuff called ActionScript.
Yeah.
Most people, fancy themselves artists, didn't want to touch it. And back then you could get away with it, but you got paid more if you could script. So started doing ActionScript. Then ActionScript 2 came out, which was object-oriented, based on Java.
Yep.
JavaScript, kind of Java, basically JavaScript. More Java. And so I started learning object-oriented programming there. And the industry collapsed. Didn't know what to do, but right before it collapsed, I managed to take advantage of one of those crazy .com perks they had at companies. It was just ludicrous. Take 3 months off and we'll pay for it to go educate.
Man.
So I had them give me 3 months off, but I went to Nomon and I learned Maya, and then worked a little bit longer at the company and then bailed and got some unemployment out of it, and just spent every day on my demo reel. My girlfriend, now my wife, I had 5 or 6 machines in my bedroom, just heating up the room and making us sweat at night, but I was rendering all these effect shots and stuff back in the old time. Yeah, so when it came to scripting, Mel was super easy compared to ActionScript, and I was like, this is way easy, I got this. And then when they released Python, I was like, I got this even more. This is way easy. It was just a natural progression into other
I can see that.
Once you know one, you can learn the others.
Yeah, that's true. So Python, basically, it's all self-taught?
Yes, and well, I had a really good programmer that sat next to me, this guy named Ofer Koren. He was one of the original contributors to PyMel back in the day, and I sat right next to him. And when I was at Image Movers, typically, when Image Movers first started, we had 12 riggers. And we had a sort of a come to Jesus day when the studio was first deciding on its pipeline, and 6 of the riggers wanted to do everything in Mel. because they were proficient in Mel and they were badasses in Mel, right?
Yeah.
The other 6 wanted to do things in Python because it was the wave of the future. And so we had sort of this split down the middle. And that went on for a while until one day just, we had like 13 creature TDs, and one of them was like, we're going to Python. And it's like the Supreme Court just kind of switched. And so we eventually just rewrote all the Mel. We didn't have that much, but went to Python. And when we did, he was put in charge because he was a really good Python programmer at the time, probably the best.
Oh, cool.
He was the best, there's no doubt. And I sat next to him, and every day he just, don't write it in Mel, write it in Python. So I was like, I can pick up a challenge like that. I would go back line by line and convert. And then PyMel, like 0.7 came out, and he looked it up. And it was completely named horrible. It shouldn't have been called PyMel. It should have just been called Python or something like that, or MyPy or something. But it was great. And he took to it, and he converted our entire pipeline to PyMel. And really, it was really amazing stuff. Image Movers completely had, the whole rigging department was run on PyMel, basically.
Wow. Oh, okay.
Yeah. And so every day, like, it was like, learn a list comprehension, learn how to do this, learn how to do this for loop, learn how to generate a subprocess. It was constantly making me.
That's cool. Do you remember anything that was like pretty challenging for you? As far as starting Python.
Yeah, like I was thinking about this because you and I had been kind of chatting about this via email. Was like, what are some of the hard things that Python programmers go through? And I believe there's sort of this little like a line graph of your competence. And so like when you first start learning, like the first 6 months, you're like, man, this is really easy. I got this, and you write a script. Then you start tooling around on like GitHub or something, and you're like, I'm gonna look at somebody else's code. And then you open it up, and then you're just like, what the heck is this? And it looks alien. It's Python, but it looks alien. So your Python coefficient of confidence goes down. And sometimes, like, that happened for me when I first saw decorators. I look at Ofer's code, and I'm like, what the heck am I looking at with decorators? That was one of the ones that just, it was like an elbow drop, because I was just getting confidence up, and it was just like, list comprehensions was a little bump in the road that took a while to kind of grasp. And then object-oriented programming, of course, everybody stumbles on that their first time. There isn't a person I know that can grasp that the first time around. Yeah. And if they say they did, then they're full of it. That's abstract thinking, And
it is. It really is.
Thinking. So yeah. I would say, like, just learning to. The thing is, you have to learn. You have to learn how to learn. You have to learn how to push yourself past those speed bumps. It's like when you're first learning Maya. It's so hard, and there's so many buttons, and everything is like overwhelming. You learn, okay, I'm just going to focus on the animation and rigging tools, or I'm going to focus just on render. Then you get really proficient in that area, and then you kind of pull out, and you're like, okay, which area is next? Oh, modeling, And then you just start making them up. But
yeah, that's a good way to put it, for sure. And, at the beginning, when your coefficient of confidence was high, what was the tool that made you proud? The first tool that made you proud in Python?
Yeah, I wrote this rendering tool that would take caches that got made from our characters. So in Image Movers, we used GTO as our cache mechanism. And we had like a publishing mechanism where we would publish, like an animator would publish a set. Each character would get published out as a separate GTO. And then we had to have a way to test the cloth to make sure there was no penetrations and stuff like that. So we had this phase called a FISA phase. I don't even remember. It was like first in lighting surface render or something. I don't remember what FISA stood for, but I remember there was like Phyla, FISA, whatever. And I remember writing a script that took the cloth fixes and the shape fixes, loaded those caches up, applied textures in RenderMan, and then would send it off to the farm to render. And I was like, oh my God, I think I got this. I think I got it.
That's cool.
So it was the tool I wrote. It was like, and of course Ofer was along the way, no, start with the base dictionary, and he guided me, but it's mine. So
yeah, that's cool. What about one of the most recent tools that you're proud of? Like what does it do?
Yeah, like at at ILM, right? I mean, I've written a couple of tools. The one that I'm surprised is still around, I wrote like 3 years ago, is this ragdoll tool for animators.
Hmm.
So we use FizzBam. I don't know if you're familiar with FizzBam. It's a wait, yeah, you were at Lucas. So it's a dynamics tool. It's a dynamics engine developed by Stanford, and we managed to create a version of it that works inside of Maya. We have some really great R&D engineers, but cool. It never fully got integrated or didn't get off the ground. And then LucasArts got shut down, and the R&D engineer that was building it was at LucasArts, and he went over to ILM, and they put him on a different project. So it kind of got, but rigids got implemented. So I was able to like write a script that would take any rig that an animator had, and on the frame he wanted to go ragdoll, he could press a button. It would build like, based on known joints, it would build this like ragdoll out of rigids.
Oh, that's cool.
And then using matrices like constrained to that rigid doll, and then so he would be running and animating. It had pair blends and everything in it that would be animated off and on. And then it would just like the guy would be running like a stormtrooper, and then it just and then you'd fall down.
That's awesome.
And because it was FizzBam, I could do collisions, so they could do like a sphere to like indicate like a laser hit or something like that. And they still use it to this day. And I was just like. One of the hokiest things in the world in a kind of half-baked program, but
that's great. And so when you program now in Python, do you judge or are you most proud of what the script is going to be used for, or are you also proud or more proud maybe the way that you implemented it, like the how clean the code is, how modular it is, and that kind of stuff?
I am most proud of clear, concise code that is well commented, so that when somebody else looks at my code, I don't want them to like face palm and go, "What the hell is he doing?" Right? And sometimes you can do that if you're trying to shoehorn something in there that you just learned. Like when I first learned named tuples, I tried to use them for everything, right? But they just didn't really kind of fit in. But I would do all these weird back bends in my code to make it use a name tuple, and I was just like, yeah. And it turns out all it really is under the hood is an ordered dictionary. That's all it is. Like if you actually look at the inside of a name tuple, you're like, this is just an ordered dictionary. So I was just like, forget it. I'm just going to use an ordered dictionary from now on for everything. So
nice.
But so I like it when the code doesn't try to get too kung fu-y. Like I know I can put everything in a giant list comprehension that just looks.
Yep.
I'm not trying to impress Pythonistas anymore. Like I've gone past that, where I'm just trying to make it where if I show this to somebody who's like 1 or 2 years into Python, they can look at it, look at the comment, figure out what they're looking at, and figure out how to pick up my code and run with it.
Yep.
And after like 2 or 3 years. So my goal is to just make clear, concise, readable Python.
That's great. And I think it's one of the main not rules of Python, but it's one of the main ideas behind Python to be very, very clear and everything. So that's great.
We've all picked up other people's code and just like, what are you doing?
Yeah, I remember.
Every function prefixed with your initials, like what's going on here?
I remember looking at like many years ago some Perl code. I wanted to Perl my hair out. That's bad.
Mel looks like Perl. Yeah.
It's true.
It's totally true. Yeah, I think it was based on Perl actually.
Oh wow! Did you know that I had a interview with Autodesk at some point, and like we were talking about the stuff that I knew and everything, and they all internally apparently they refer to Mel as MEL. So when they asked, so do you know MEL? I was like, what?
I've never met her.
Never met her.
What department is she in?
Exactly.
Who's this Emmy?
Anyway.
Really? They refer to it as MEL? They don't
MEL. Yeah. It was totally wild. So, you definitely, you're working now in one of the, best places in the world as far as
I agree.
effects. I personally think the best place in the world for visual effects. Yeah. So definitely you have a lot of experience and then a lot of knowledge. Yeah. Is there something that you are maybe currently working on improving or working on?
Always. You cannot let down your guard because everything moves. Computer science moves. There's new languages every week. There's like Lua is now making its way into visual effects. It's in games.
Oh, really?
Katana. So Lua's out there. So I'm not learning Lua right now. I'm trying to learn Houdini right now in a like in a deep fashion, instead of just being like a point and click user kind of thing. I want to go in and learn the Houdini object model, Vex. I really think Houdini is one of those applications that was built by engineers, and it was hard for people to understand for a long time.
Yeah.
But then when you start seeing, I think about maybe 7-8 years ago, there was such amazing effects coming out of Houdini. And I just remember thinking to myself, wow, this tool is really cool. And the first time I picked it up, I was kind of like, man, this is just annoying. Everything ends in ops. This is just hard for me. I didn't have the mindset at the time. But now I've kind of come full circle around, and now I see it as it is probably going to surpass Maya, I think, in the next couple of years as, well, maybe not surpass. I would say it's going to be either on par. It's going to be like studios will be using these two tools for everything.
Yeah, even for character rigging and animation, is that does it have solid?
I don't know. Like, more animators love Maya. They're all using Maya. They all know Maya.
Yeah.
Maybe Maya will be used for animation, but everything beyond that, for like simulating cloth or flesh and simulations and stuff like that, eventually Houdini is gonna take more ground space on that. It's gonna take more of the market share, I think.
I see.
So knowing it is going to be important.
I see.
And the cool part is the Python inside there is just like PyMail.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like everything is an object. It's object oriented, and everything has like an object with a method. So when you script in Houdini, it's so refreshing. It's like, oh, I know this.
Yeah.
I knew how to get around. I knew to ask for help. I knew how to like logically figure it out and think it through.
So talking about PyMail, I never picked it up because I kept hearing an argument that for me it made sense for a while, which is, PyMail is not really part of Maya, it might disappear, at some point, right? So what do you say to that?
Well, I happen to have some inside knowledge about that. Autodesk doesn't really do anything except for pull from a GitHub repository once every like 2 or 3 months.
Okay.
And then they pack it in with Maya and they ship it with Maya. So it's very little work for Autodesk. And most of the work goes on to the people who contribute to it, who keep it running. And so as far as Autodesk is concerned, it's been part of their product now for about 9 years. 9 or 10 years, and it would be foolish for them to just suddenly stop supporting it because people would be up in arms.
Yeah.
And it's no work, no skin off their chest to just quickly, do a GitHub and update the build for the next version of Maya. So
I see. That makes sense.
Yeah, and so the PyMail people always have a chance to keep it updated. They're not going to be updating any more of the Python 2 API for Maya. I mean, I think that's what I've heard. It's kind of been put on hold. And they're researching like a Python 3 sort of, not Python 3, but a API version 3.0 version. But I don't know what the game plan is on that. Autodesk is notoriously slow for updating their Python APIs.
Yeah. And speaking of Python 3, like at work I do hear some or maybe even people that I talk to in general that want to start Python and everything, and they say right away, well, I should pick up version 3, and usually what I say is like you should probably pick up the version if you're doing Maya specific Python. That you should probably pick up the 2.7. Yeah. Because there is some
2.7 is 2.711 or 2.76, or I can't remember which version it's in 17, but they're going to stay with 2.7 for a while. There's no real necessity. And the thing is, most of Python 2.7 is backported, or so it'll work with 3. So a lot of the code, it's not that different, really. It's really not that different. So there's a few issues with iterators that are different, and like for loops, like if you went through like a for loop, some of the variables that would be in the for loop, those are going to be stored. Those are going to be garbage collected as soon as you exit the for loop now. So you won't actually be able to like look in a for loop and go, what was the last value of this thing? It's going to be gone. It's just a memory. A lot of these things have been done to improve memory. So almost every item that is a sequence, like lists and series and stuff, they're all going. Well, all of the iterators are going to become like generators as far as memory performance.
Oh, okay.
The if you're ever curious, there is a. Let me see if I can find it real quick here. If you can bear with me, VFX platform. Have you heard of this?
I don't think so. Yeah.
Okay, so the VFX platform. These are a bunch of people that have gotten together and decided what we're going to be doing in the next couple of years and when we're going to move forward. And you can see here that 2.7 is just the standard forever.
Yeah.
So it's going to stay that way until 2017, and they'll come up with a new Python VFX platform. So this is a bunch of companies have gotten together from the Visual Effects Society and said, this is what we're going to do.
Cool.
And you can see that they moved to PySide 2.0, and you can see that has been put in the latest versions of Maya. So versus the 1.2 version that was out there too. So I just wish there was some kind of documentation on that, which doesn't exist at the moment. But yeah, so if you're ever wondering like what the game plan is for the overall VFX industry, it's probably on this VFX platform.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, well, I'm definitely going to use it. Thank you.
Yeah, no reason.
So yeah, also, have you played around with PySide 2.0?
I've played around with it a little bit, but and in fact, some of my students have been returning some of their homework in PySide 2 and been reporting back to me some of the things that I need to update in the class. So I'm in the process of kind of trying some of my homework that I have suggested to people, or checking all of my code inside of Maya 2017 and seeing what differences. But I'm also going to try and build it all in PySide 2.0, and there will be augmented videos eventually put into the class or the workshop where it's like, hey, if you're on PySide 2.0, you might have to change these 15 lines of code.
I see. That's cool.
So yeah.
Okay.
But like right now, there's no documentation on PySide 2.0's API at all. So it's just sort of, I'm letting my students trial and error, and then I've asked them to send me like little example code so that I can start to kind of assemble my own little mindset on this. So
I see. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, you teach classes. Created a tutorial. Yeah. So you are also an instructor, right? Like you work in the visual effects, but also you're an instructor. What is your favorite aspect of teaching other people?
It's got to be that aha moment when you actually watch them kind of. So in my workshop, we start off knowing nothing, and then by the end of the class, there's this moment where a bunch of students, and I've had it several times now, where they're like, oh my God, I didn't know any Python, and now I've written a UI that stores NURBS curves in a JSON file, and I can retrieve them whenever I want and regenerate these, and I can create new curves, and I've created sub-process, and they realize that they are effective Python programmers now, or they've been given like the training wheels are off and it's time to actually go into the world. And so I love it. I've gotten some really great feedback from my students, and it's really heartwarming. So the moment where they kind of have those aha moments, it's when they're like, oh my God, I never understood this until I watched your video. That's the feeling I live for. I'm like, yes.
That's great.
Yes, I picked the right analogy.
Yes. Do you also find yourself sometimes learning while you're teaching?
Yeah, all the time. I mean, I am constantly a consumer of Python videos and Python content. I'm always watching people's videos, even if it's something I think is, I've got this. Oh, how to set up Sublime to work with whatever. Every now and then you'll find somebody who has a different kind of Sublime set up in their UI, and they're like, oh, why would you use that package?
Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. I didn't know that even existed, because there's like 5,000 packages for Sublime.
Yeah, definitely.
And so I learned a little bit of improvement in my workflow, or I'll watch. I love David Beasley. I don't know if you know who he is.
No, I never heard of him.
David Beasley has this book, this one right here. He wrote this one, the Essential Reference. Yeah, this one right here. It's kind of backwards on the screen, I think, but that's okay.
That's good.
I don't know why Zoom does this.
Yeah, I think I saw that book.
This is one of the best books I've ever read. It's so clear. He speaks in the simplest of terms. So I know that he's using the Richard Feynman method of teaching, where he will just practice saying these words in the most simplest terms to like writing it down on a whiteboard so that he has his complete script ready to kind of memorize. So when he teaches this to someone, he uses the simplest terms.
That's great.
And he gets the idea across in the simplest way. So he even has some training videos out too that just came out in November or October of last year. And I've been digesting those because he's got some really good, it's more advanced. It's like, you know, he's using coroutines and async IO. I don't know if you know what that is, but it's like it's like this Python module that's only available in Python 3 where you can sort of like farming, like a farm would, where you send a job out to a processor to do something and then come back. Well, this async IO kind of lines everything up so that you can, instead of multi-processing, you're like multi-CPUing, where you send things out and it would sit and wait and poll for the results. And then as the results come in, it kind of like goes to the next line of the code after all the kind of, so everything is asynchronous, but it's synchronous.
Wow.
It's some pretty cool stuff, but it's only available in Python 3. So
I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I mean, that would not be useful at all for Maya. But I love to know where the world's going, like how to think about solving problems in a different way than what people are just used to. You know.
Totally. That's great.